going stargazing now because as we talk regularly on this show about the Knicks, it is about getting another big player ultimately. I think that's where their focus still lies, regardless of what happens in the draft, regardless of what happens in the offseason. I do think ultimately that's where they are. So let's take a look at a couple options here. One is Paul George. Paul George, talked about him earlier. The idea that he may not get a deal done with the Clippers, and he may be looking for another team to go out and give him that last big deal that he's looking for 4 years. Clippers have not been willing to go there to date. I think Philadelphia, I think they would, if I had to guess, go 4 years. I don't know if the Knicks would. I know that Knicks have been interested in Paul George in the past. I'm not sure, though, that if you bring back OG Anunoby, Paul George is that guy that you go all in for. If you lose Anunoby, it's a different conversation. That's where I think it hinges on Paul George. CP, what are you keeping an eye on in terms of the trade market and that big name that may be out there?
Yeah, it's hard to see right now because, as Cass said earlier on the show, it just doesn't seem like that name is out there. James Jones from Phoenix said you can forget about any of those Phoenix big three being available. Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, namely. I would have no interest in Bradley Beal. Donovan Mitchell. Or is he going to sign the extension with the Cavs? Does he go somewhere else? Like you had said, Ian, on a show earlier, it doesn't seem like the Knicks have much interest in Donovan Mitchell as they once had 2 years ago. Karl Anthony Towns, I'm really not interested in that. Would Minnesota go ahead and try to peel that back after the success that they had and also in the backdrop of ownership uncertainty? So is a Towns pursuit really there? That's why I go back to a guy like a DeJounte Murray, one of those mid-level players who can help move your depth a little bit forward. You get young, you get athletic, and it just keeps the Knicks in that competitive arena around the East. I'm just not sure if that home run splash is available for the Knicks right now.
Yeah, I don't think there is one, but a name that I've really started to really become enamored with over the past few days has been Brandon Ingram of the New Orleans Pelicans, right? Like, he's a guy who has an all-star level talent, and one thing that I've noticed about this Knicks team towards the end of the regular season and the postseason was like, man, they score, but like, I would love to see them get bigger on the wing and get more athletic as scorers. I mean, being able to finish at the rim and get threes are great. But if you got somebody who's in the 6'7" to 6'10" range who could stretch the floor out a little bit and that could score in the mid range, that would be a great get. Also, it doesn't seem like Brandon Ingram will cost a farm as, one of these other superstars might cost for, a Booker or a Towns or any of these other like megastars that have sort of been floated around over the past several years. Brandon Ingram seems like he would be a nice fit. Watching the end of that Pelicans series, obviously with Zion hurt, I don't like to play armchair psychologist, but he looked a little burnt out from the situation, just as far as like, his injuries concerned as well. Maybe a fresh start in New York alongside Josh Hart, a guy who he played with for a good amount of his career in Los Angeles and New Orleans, could help ensure some of that chemistry that we've seen with the Nova Knicks so far. So over the past few days, I'm starting to really come around on thinking, if you can go and make a swing for Brandon Ingram and still possibly hold on to Randall and Brunson and the guys that you really helped build this team around, that could be something really special.
Yeah, the Pelicans have a decision to make on Ingram, whether they want to offer him a max extension or whether they don't, and where they feel comfortable with there. Obviously, Zion Williamson has that big contract, and they're going to have to pay Trey Murphy III. So they're going to have big decisions financially coming up. Maybe that makes Ingram available. I know teams are kind of planning as if he could be available. I don't know about the Knicks. I haven't heard specifically on them and Brandon Ingram. I would keep an eye on Cleveland, especially if Donovan Mitchell does decide to stick around, which I think that's the way it'll go at this point. I would keep an eye on the Cavs, maybe poking around on Ingram, seeing what it would take to trade for him, because you put him in Cleveland, depending on who's left, that could be a pretty formidable foe in the Eastern Conference. And other names, Jimmy Butler, I think depending on how high Miami wants to go for him, for his extension, for his next deal, maybe he becomes available. Is he a Knick target? Look, they have the draft capital to get involved in any of these conversations if teams are looking for top young players back. I would think other teams could put together a stronger package. But when it comes down to just draft capital, I think the Knicks will be right there with any team that they want to get involved with, conversation-wise. I think so. Butler, you keep an eye on, but I don't see him as being the guy that the Knicks push all their chips in as the final piece here. I think that player has yet to emerge.